Can I first of all thank the media for staying as long as they have. I realise that our deliberations have run on slightly longer than we'd planned this morning, but I guess that's the nature of international sport. But thank you very much. The first issue I want to deal with very, very quickly is the outcome of the 2020 bids for the World Indoor Athletics Championships. Let me be really clear here. We had 3 outstanding, extraordinary bids this morning. The length of deliberation and discussion around the table exemplified that. There can only be one winner. It is sport. And it is my great pleasure to announce that Nanjing won the approval of the Council this morning to stage the 2020 World Indoor Championships. Let me, before the celebrations continue, let me make one really important point. And I wasn't just using warm words at the beginning of this. All 3 bids were absolutely outstanding. All 3 cities would have been able to have staged a wonderful World Indoor Athletics Championships. It is our responsibility now to make sure that the 2 bids that did not prevail today are encouraged to throw their hat back in the ring. They will be given every support and encouragement to do that. And those discussions I want to start taking place as soon as is sensible. But thank you to Torun. Thank you also to Belgrade for your presence here. And also, if I may say so, the inclusion of the athletes in that bid. And that's very important. And it chimes entirely with the direction that this sport wants to take, that we have athletes that are not just there as expensive calling cards, but are actually really helping us shape the future of the sport. So to the 2 athletes that I'm sitting looking at in front of me, thank you very much for giving up quality training time, I know, to be here, but thank you very much. And to all the bid leaders, thank you for your support. I think I'm going to ask Nanjing to come up and sign as quickly as we can get our... You to take that. Thank you. I think that is probably me on here. If you want to put your signature on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chinese.
Whichever way you want. Good. Thank you. This way. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. He's the General Secretary of the Serbian.
Hello. Left to the hardcore. Well done. You actually should all get medals for the marathon you've all gone through for the last 5 days. I'm going to hand over to Seb just to talk a little bit about what we've been deciding in Council. There are a couple of decisions this morning. And then to Rune to take you through where we are with the Russian reinstatement.
Again, thank you for remaining so patient and staying with us. And I'll keep my remarks as brief as I possibly can. Particularly as we still have an afternoon of Council still remaining with some big meaty things that we need to address. But first of all, thank you for being here. This has been a busy week actually, because although we have focused on Council and the decision that we made today, many of my colleagues have been here since the beginning of the week, serving on the many Council's committees, working groups that are helping drive the sport forward. And I'd like to thank them, particularly those that are of my Council colleagues that have joined us at this press conference. We, of course, then segued from that towards the end of the week into the awards night. I know that many of you were there. Let me place on record my thanks to our teams and also the professional team that helped us put that together. And encouragingly, given that there have been 3 or 4 opportunities for me to spend very good time with the athletes over the course of the last few days, that their message to me from the awards night and beyond, and certainly in advance of that, was that they want to be a part of this journey. They really feel that they have something to add that can help shape that journey. And they want change, and they are very clear about that. They want change, they want rapid change. They press us as Council and organisational structures to make that change as quickly as we possibly can, but as safely as we possibly can. And that is very much the tenor of the message that we're receiving across the sport. I talked about it at our Congress in London. And what the broader point I made to Council, and I'm very happy to make it here, is that we have come a long way in the last 2 years. We have come a long way in making the House safer, putting in systems that will serve this sport very well. And yes, we will continue to talk about reform because that is very important. Predominantly, most of those reforms, aside from the Athletics Integrity Unit that was up and running effectively from April onwards this year, most of those reforms predominantly lie beyond 2019. So it is really important that as we are seeking area and member federation alignment, that we go on continuing to articulate the reason for those reforms and the next stages of those reforms. That doesn't mean, however, that we're not now focusing relentlessly on the changes of formats, rules, revenue raising, our ability to maintain the 3 or 4 core work streams around One Day, around Diamond League, around the coordinated calendar, and the other pieces of work that you know are already underway, like the addressing the transfers of allegiance issue. All these things are being driven. It is for the Council and for our headquarters, though, to make sure that we have the right processes and the right structures in place for this to come together in a coordinated way. Clearly, one of the big decisions that was made this morning was around Russia. And I'm particularly pleased to welcome Rune Andersson to the table. And Rune, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Seb. So I'll, since the Congress, IAAF Congress in August, The task force, IAAF task force, has been in constant communication with RUSAF and its president, Dmitry Slyatkin, and representatives of the task force met with him and the Ministry of Sport in Oslo in late October. Once again, and I've been mentioning this before, Mr. Slyatkin has impressed us with his professionalism and with his various initiatives he is pursuing to change the old doping culture in Russia track and field. These include a social media campaign in support of clean sport, mandatory online anti-doping education for athletes joining the under-18 national squad, and a new licensing system for coaches. Some of the milestones on the roadmap to RUSAF's reinstatement have been met, at least in part. However, several key ones remain outstanding, and these include the reinstatement of RUSADA, which is the national anti-doping organization in Russia, as a fully independent and code-compliant national anti-doping organization. The need for RUSAF to work with RUSADA to develop and implement an effective and intelligent testing plan for Russian track and field athletes. And thirdly, the acknowledgement by the Russian authorities of the McLaren findings that Ministry of Sport officials orchestrated a cover-up of evidence of doping by Russian athletes. The task force thinks this is vital because unless there is an acknowledgement of what happened before, there can be no assurance that it will not happen again. Therefore, the task force recommended to the IAAF Council that RUSAF not be reinstated at this time. The Council accepted unanimously that recommendation, and the task force is very grateful to the IAAF Council and its president for the support that we have received in our deliberations. As usual, the task force detailed report will be published in the IAAF's official website.
Thank you, Rune.
Rune, thank you. If I just may complete my opening remarks. We received an update report from the AIU this morning. I don't want to go into the minutiae of detail, but we also had a progress report on the status of the 5 countries that we have on our watch list, and I'm very pleased to be able to announce that one of those countries, Morocco, has now been taken off that watch list. They will maintain their progress and be monitored, but they are not now on the watch list, and with varying degrees of monitoring, the other 4 do remain on the watch list. Let me also say that, of course, over the course of the last 2 days, Nanjing was not the only city that was chosen to host our World Athletics Series events, and I'm delighted that Gdynia will be the hosts for the World Half Marathon Championships, and that Minsk will be hosting the World Race Walking Team Championships. Both those cities presented extremely well, and we look forward to showcasing that particular manifestation of our sport in those 2 very competent and capable cities with the support of their member federations behind them. So that, I think, really concludes my opening remarks, and I think, Jackie, I'm happy, obviously, to take any questions.
You all know the decision on transfer of allegiance that we made yesterday, so that was the other major decision over the last 2 days. But questions, usual format, hand up, name, publication, please. We'll start with you.
Hello, Artem Kuznetsov, the TASS News Agency. Mr. Ko, what are the chances now that Russian athletes will participate in the indoor World Championships in Birmingham under national flag? 1% or less?
No, I have assiduously avoided maintaining that type of commentary throughout this process. It's really important. I'm very grateful to the remarks of Rooney about the consistency of the process and the consistency of the approach given to this process by my council colleagues. So that is that we have unanimously on every occasion endorsed the recommendations of the task force, and we will continue to do that. And you know, I'm very clear about it. You know, it is important that under the right set of circumstances and the fully met criteria that we put into the public domain in agreement with RUSAF, that we have that system in place, and that we do want, of course, the reinstatement under the right conditions for Russian athletes to resume their place in the international sport.
Next. Yes, Mark.
Marc Ventouillac, l'équipe, and I will ask usually my question in French, because French is always official language of IAAF. Deux questions. La première, pour rebondir sur la question de mon confrère. C'est bon? C'est bon? Ok. Juste, doit-il y avoir un conseil de l'I2F justement de prévu avant les mondiaux en salle? Et si à ce moment-là les critères sont remplis, est-ce qu'il y aurait la possibilité, parce que je ne pense pas que vous ayez répondu à la question, de voir les Russes réétablis par un conseil? Et ma deuxième question, comme nos amis chinois étaient là tout à l'heure, il y a environ 2 ans, une lettre avait été publiée dans un livre chinois où Wang Yongxia et d'autres athlètes accusaient leur entraîneur, Ma Yunren, de les avoir dopés. Il me semble que la Fédération internationale, avant la création de votre unité indépendante, avait lancé une enquête. Donc ce serait pour savoir où en est la situation à propos de Wang Yongxia et toute l'armée de Ma Yunren.
Mark, thank you. The answer to your first question is no, the Council will be meeting post the World Indoor Championships in Birmingham. And the answer to your second question is yes, we've been working very closely with the Chinese Athletics Association, their federation. They have kept us fully informed. And they have also made clear that the athlete concerned has actually signed an affidavit to say that the statement that is purported to have been made is not an accurate reflection of anything that she has said or written. And I do also remind you that the AIU consider this to be an open case, given the observations made by WADA that they too would be looking at these circumstances.
Okay, any further questions? Oh, go for it again. Oh no, well, let's go Jean first, and then we'll come back to Tass.
Seb, is there any possibility that the roadmap could be met before the World Indoor Championships? And if it is met, would the Council have some type of meeting to reinstate Russia?
Rooney, do you want to?
I'm going to ask Rooney to do that, but it is just worth remembering, of course, that the ANA athletes has been actually an important way of fulfilling one of the very clear philosophies that have underpinned this whole process, which is separation, where possible, of the clean athletes from a tainted system, or at least a system that is trying to recover from the previous very high-profile concerns that have been expressed. But Rune, I will leave that with you.
Well, as I mentioned in my initial remarks, we are in constant communications with RUSAF, with RUSADA, with WADA, who is also dealing with this, and even with the IPC, who is dealing also with this issue. Which means that at a certain stage, hopefully, we will be able to recommend to the IAAF Council to have RUSAF reinstated. When, it is impossible to say for me too, but as soon as those conditions have been met, we will certainly liaise with the President here, and we will find a way to deal with that at the appropriate time.
Okay. Elias. Then we'll come back to that young lady.
Yeah, Elias from the Daily Nation in Kenya. Mr. President, any update on the cases of the Kenyan officials who are being investigated? That's David Okeyo and Joseph Kinyo, because the case has really taken too long, and there is concern that now Kenya is no longer represented on council, despite the fact that it's one of the leading nations in track and field.
Yes, that's a matter for the AIU. That is an ongoing investigation. Of course, that runs in tandem with your own domestic investigations that are taking place. And Vivian Gungaram has now been nominated by the President of the African Association to represent Africa's interests, additional interests on the Council.
Okay, yes, young lady here.
Ashley from the Olympic Channel. President, any update on the changes or the rankings or the radical changes that you're wanting to make?
Well, I think there are a lot of radical changes that we want to make. We need to make sure that they are within a process and a structure that lands them with proper consultation and to the point where they're actually going to achieve what we set out to do. So, for instance, as Jackie mentioned in her opening remarks, and that you are aware of, the transfer of allegiance, that was a decision. We went through the processes and the complexity of the situation, and extra work will be reported back to Council at the March meeting. We had updates on the work around the coordination of the calendar, which is a very important part of the process of improving the competitive season and the understanding and the rhythm and the pace of that season, not just for the athletes, but for the media and obviously for spectators as well. So those were all issues all streams of work that have been reported on, and actually some of those streams of work will be reported on when I leave this room in the next few minutes.
That's great, because we spoke to the athletes over the last few days and they were all very supportive of the World Championships being the final event. That
is a very, very clear steer from the athletes, but not just the athletes as well. Many of the stakeholders that we have sat down with have said that makes a lot of sense at the end of the year, but the real process that we're into at the moment is really carving out key blocks of the year where we've got certainty about what stage of the year our sport is in, and then creating space at the end of the year for innovation, for road, for all the things that we need to do to take athletics from the stadium, but into people's neighbourhoods.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, one last question.
Yes. Kosuke Nagaki from the Asahi Shimbun, the Japanese newspaper. The question to Mr. Anderson. For me, the recent comments from Mr. Zhukov, the top official of the Russian Olympic Committee,
are saying there wasn't any systematic doping. Do you see the progress of the Russian side, or is it getting more and more difficult for the RUSADA to be reinstated?
Well, for sure, this is more a question for WADA, because WADA is dealing with RUSADA as such, so they will have to respond to that. I know that there has been an audit of RUSADA by WADA. The broader question which I raised in my remarks here is whether they will be able to operate in a system which we can trust. And I think that is what needs to be addressed by Russian authorities, which will have an impact on RUSAF, on RUSADA, and everybody within the sports system in Russia.
Okay, very last question.
Mr. Anderson, when are you going to organize the next meeting with the RUSAF? Any points? And Mr. Coe, could you explain me one thing, please? You have mentioned yesterday that the clean athletes should be aware that they compete against athletes from good system. And as you know, many countries even haven't got any anti-doping systems, for example, anti-doping agencies. Others countries, the anti-doping agencies of several countries are declared non-compliant, for example, in Seoul, Kuwait, and others. And as you know, from the other hand, the Russian anti-doping agency made a huge reform, and it's absolutely independent. It works under control of UCAD, United Kingdom Anti-Doping Agency. So why it seems that the IAAF use the principle of double standards in this case? Could you explain, please? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We haven't decided on the next meeting with RUSAF. As we speak, there will be the report that I gave to the council, IAAF Council, this afternoon, will be sent to RUSAF with a cover letter to the president of RUSAF. And then we will see how we move forward when we will be meeting next time, but the date or a date has not been set yet.
Thank you. Look, I don't think this is a case of double standards. We have a responsibility as a federation to make sure that we create balance for all the athletes. You know, I'm very, very clear here, and the athletes are even clearer that they want to know that if they are devoting over half their young lives to the pursuit of something that it allows us to showcase the #1 Olympic sport to the best effect, that it is our responsibility to create that landscape where there is trust. And, you know, I remind you that, yes, of course, the focus, because of the scale of the problem, has inevitably settled on Russia. And we're not the only sport, and we're not the only organization that has to deal with that issue. I would also remind you that we were very proactive shortly after the suspension of the Russian Federation in wanting to understand a great deal more about the status of some of the domestic anti-doping processes, particularly at member federation level, hence the watch list. And that watch list, by the way, is not necessarily complete or exhaustive. I'm very pleased to announce that Morocco, through its own efforts, has left that watch list with continued monitoring, but that list is not exhaustive. And the Council was very clear to both the AIU and within its own membership that we wanted to continually understand where it is that we need to be proactive, where it is that we need to sometimes apply extra resources and our own expertise to make sure that we don't have a landscape that is varied and one that the athletes lack trust in. So I see it as all part of the same process, but I don't for one moment believe that this is about double standards. If anything, we've extended our oversight to those federations, to those domestic anti-doping systems that we feel are at best operating suboptimally and at worst may not be may not be remotely in the kind of shape that will allow us to further that trust.
Okay, thank you. We've got the other half of council this afternoon, so thank you very much. And the report, if you don't have it, if anyone is watching, is on the website now. So do have a read. It goes through a lot of detail. Thank you.